SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
Have you been seriously injured? Mama Justice is here for you. Our medical team partners with top-notch doctors, surgeons, therapists, and urologists, ensuring a comprehensive recovery journey. If you've been injured, call Mama Justice today. We're here for you.
Power your home or business with C Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C Spire. C Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Will East this morning in the Element Wealth studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. What's up there, Will?
What's going on?
Man, I don't know it. A whole bunch of crazy stuff is what's going on. College football, it's just been turned upside down, is it not? There's some folks that are saying, I saw Feinbaum yesterday. Of course, he's pretty popular analyst and commentator on all things college athletics, in particular college football. Man, he was sent a very scolding type message to those involved in college football about how they just let this craziness ensue. Said they've ruined it. I mean, he literally said they've ruined it. Talking specifically, I guess, about this latest news. We got a college football player that goes plays a little NFL ball, or at least gets drafted. Takes some money as part of that. Now it looks like he's going back to play for Lane Kiffin at LSU. And in this report I saw, Will, they had a little interview with Kiffin, and he said, well, everybody's going to be doing this. That's what he said. You know, that's kind of what his attitude was when he first went to Ole Miss, when you had a lot of pushback on just the entire NIL deal, where people just thought, man, that's ruining college football. We were paying these guys a lot of money, and this has just changed it completely. And by the way, we let them just move around freely for the most part. And so it used to be a big deal on signing day. You sign somebody, they're there. You know, they're either going to stay, they're going to be released, or they're going to quit, in which case they got to sit out before they go anywhere else. I don't remember what all the rules were, but in general, when you sign somebody up, they were there permanently. You could expect them. Well, now it's a world where you're constantly recruiting the players on your team, and just in the hopes that they stick around. And he said, and I remember when he came to Ole Miss, he was talking about just the way that the NIL situation had injected chaos into college football. And he said, these are the rules. We're going to play by them. I would submit that's why he had success at Ole Miss. While the others were kind of dismissing it and sort of pushing back on it, he jumped right in it, sort of begrudgingly. But he did it. And now, it's what he said this morning. All the players that are at the NFL that are eligible to return, that seek to return to the college ranks, yeah, I'm going to be out there recruiting them. Man, it's just turned things upside down. That I guess that was the biggest thing I got over the last 24 hours. It was just seeing Kiffin with that LSU visor on, talking about that. It reminded me, like I said, of when he was first at Ole Miss and talking about embracing the portal and the NIL and the new rules. But I will tell you, Will, as part of that trip I made is when the Collective was organizing. That's, of course, the group that raises money to pay players. It's what they do. We got to meet with the head coaches of all the programs up there. And when we went to meet with Coach Bianco over in the baseball, he didn't seem as fired up about it. Just how he felt like it would just change the recruiting process, the retention process, and and just a relationship with the players. But you have to give it to Kiffin. He said from the get-go, man, these are the rules. We're going to learn how to thrive. We're going to learn how to leverage it, and that's what he is saying now.
Well, it's one of those things where the people that of privilege, that might not be the right word, but the blue blood programs, they were able to, kind of keep the national championships and all the success. You'd have an occasional sleeper that came up, but for the most part, it was your Alabamas and your Georgias and your Florida States and your Ohio States and USCs, and they would just, that was the ones.
Yeah,
and you had to work so much harder than those programs to make it, to the top, and you couldn't sustain it for very long.
That's right.
This whole NIL transfer portal, which both kind of hit at the same time, kind of evened the playing field, not completely, but it helped it. And so that's why you see a lot of teams like Ole Miss, for example, is probably the poster child of it, who took advantage of it.
For a small program, right, to compete with the bigger programs. Well, in the old days, I recall a big asset used in recruiting was facilities.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Facilities was big.
Oh,
right?
Their facilities aren't up to snuff. So
and they brag about it. And that, has fallen down the list. It's, okay, how much are you going to pay me? So that, I guess you could look at it from the perspective of, well, I can deal with, maybe second or third tier facilities given the amount of money they're going to pay me. And by the way, if I don't like it, I'll just leave after a year and go somewhere else. Not as permanent. And Feinbein even pointed out that, most of these kids, they're really not even enrolled, is what he said. They're not even students. I don't know if that's allowed now, but I've always thought that we were headed in that direction. Ultimately, they would just be hired guns that are paid to play, and they won't be student athletes. It's pretty close to that now, is it not?
Somebody asked Pete Golding yesterday about academics.
Yeah. What did he say?
I don't remember the response, but it was like, okay,
I'm here to win football games, right? So
that's exactly right.
Yeah, but we've created that environment, so you can't blame him for that. But you know that. They used to stress out. I remember signing day, man. Well, yeah, they signed the letter of intent, right, to play, but they still got to get through the clearinghouse and make their grades in high school and their ACT.
That seems like
when's the last time you heard that? Yeah. And then remember the old days when, well, shoot, we got the grades and they didn't qualify, didn't make it through the clearinghouse. We're going to place them at a junior college for a year to see if they can get their grades up and call on them to come on up. When's the last time you heard that? I don't think that even happens anymore.
No, so. It's just, it's professional now. And then you've got this whole kind of loophole, for lack of a better word, of where these players who are in the NFL, and it's only for the players who were of the 2022 high school class. There's a window where they may be able to, in some circumstances, come back to college after signing pro contracts. Now, the Big Ten came out this morning saying, nope, can't do it. The Big 12 came out this morning and said, nope, can't do it. We're writing rules right now to won't allow it. The SEC kind of came out last night with this kind of, well, we talked and, exactly. We really don't want that to happen. But they didn't come out with anything substantial. No, this ain't happening type statement. They say they're going to talk some more. We'll see. But it's just a big old mess. And and the whole reason behind all this, Gerard, you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
There's a lot of truth to that. That's right.
It was this amateur deal.
Yeah.
You played while it was part of the school. And now you're trying to retrofit the professional aspects of it, but aren't 100% professional. Because you can't form a union.
Yeah.
You don't get a lot of the benefits. You don't get paid a salary, and you're not an employee. We're trying to fit all that into this amateur model, and it's always going to be a mess.
To some extent, we the fans are responsible. I'm not going to say take the blame because I don't think any of us were looking. Here's what I mean by that. We have this insatiable appetite for it.
Absolutely.
And that drove television. And that drives advertising revenue. And that pushed big revenue into college sports, football in particular. It's our fault. And so the players say, hey, wait, what about our cut here?
Yeah. The other aspect that doesn't get talked about is our viewing habits. Have driven a lot of this because now we don't sit down and watch a sitcom.
That's what I'm saying.
Or a drama, Law and Order. We don't watch it like we used to. But the thing that we do watch live is sports.
Yeah. Used to be when I was going through is one game a week on Saturday, right? Now it's every night during football season. We got Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform at 10:35. Patrick Sullivan, president of the Mississippi Energy Institute at 12:05. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Discover Jackson's is so awesome on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Sometimes late when things are real and people share the gift of gab between themselves.
America, Tin Man, bumping us into this segment. It's middays. We got Will East filling in today. So, Will, did you catch this interview, Jesse Waters, last night with Abdul El Said, the Democrat nominee for U.S. Senate in Michigan? That one of the most bizarre interviews I've ever seen. I think may have been on, if not for the entire hour, the vast majority of it, and actually invited him to come back. Just some crazy stuff that I think may hurt Said, but the biggest takeaway of all is that the guy never answered the questions directly. He kept skirting the questions and twisting and turning and distorting and manipulating. It just was bizarre. Maybe the most I've ever seen. And guys, you go out and do a quick Google search on it, you'll see 100 articles written about it because it got that much attention across all the various political media outlets. One of the questions had to do, so Waters was going through the list, the litany of questions concerning his policy positions, those where he's espoused in a certain direction. In fact, they're featuring it on the Business Channel right now. They're reviewing this interview on the screen in the studio. And so he went through the standard questions concerning his views on everything from taxes to Medicare for all for guys playing in girls' sports, to gender-affirming care as it is described for children. Just down the list. So specifically, now he's a physician, don't forget that, Dr. El Said. He asked him about gender-affirming care for children. And he gave the standard, those decisions should be made between a child's doctor and their parents, not by the federal government.
You want me to play it? I've got it right here.
Yeah, please do. Yes.
All right, let's see if I can get it.
Changes for minors. Do you support that?
Look, I remember having great conversations with my conservative friends about right-to-try legislation. The idea that the government shouldn't tell you what kind of health care you should have. I just think the government shouldn't tell you what kind of health care you should have. And if you're a minor,
you want to try on kids?
Now, if you disagree with that, if you disagree that health care decisions need to be made by a doctor and their parents and a patient, then we think we agree to disagree. But, you want to put government inside.
So, Abdul, you're a doctor, right?
Selectively. I am.
So you think it's okay for a parent to slash his kid's ding-a-ling off? You think that's okay?
I mean, do you really want to have this conversation? Are you circumcised?
Yeah, but I mean, that's a
Jesse,
personal question.
Okay,
doctor.
So you probably should want to move on.
Is circumcision's different than castration?
I think it's a problem. It's a problem that you think that you get to decide what happens between a parent, a doctor, and a patient. And I'm just saying that, yes, circumcision is surgery on a kid's ding-a-ling. So if you really want to bring that up, you can. I just think you guys are really selective about how you want to talk about these things.
Abdul, Michigan's not going for that. That is sick stuff. Boys playing in girls' sports.
I'm not advocating anything. I'm just saying.
What about that?
So the question, again, Jesse, you have not asked me one time about the issues that people actually care about in Michigan. You don't want to talk about gas prices. You don't want to talk about groceries. You don't want to talk about health care. You don't want to talk about the stupid trade war that's about to destroy Michigan's economy.
We spent the whole interview talking about that stuff.
That's destroying, that is destroying our own military. You don't seem to want to talk about any of those things. You want to bring up all this culture war.
You believe that he equated circumcision to genital mutilation with the intent of attempting, because it doesn't really achieve what the goal is, of changing a child's gender, biological gender. That's insane that he would compare that. And so what never gets brought up by the left in that regard, look, I agree. Health care decisions are the purview of the family, in particular when it comes to a child in the household. That's the decision that should be reserved for parents. This ain't health care. That's the problem. As Jesse Waters says, whacking off the ding-a-ling, that ain't health care. I argue that's abuse. That's like saying, well, the parents are in there beating the hell out of the kid. Well, that's stuff that should be reserved as a decision for the family inside the household. No, that's child abuse. I maintain that pushing a child into mutilating their genitals is child abuse. Circumcision is not abuse. That's more of a health procedure. Physical health. This is something that's trying to address a mental health problem with physical health care treatment, medical treatment. That's the difference. He also got asked, Will, about, of course, taxes. That's a big thing, and his plans for Medicare for all, and just raising taxes on the wealthy. The same old litany, and in particular the billionaires. And what he said was, well, the billionaires make their money off their investments. Okay, I agree. You achieve that sort of liquid wealth. You invest it. That's right. And you do. You produce income off those investments, just like everybody else that has investments. What he fails to acknowledge is that they didn't wake up with $1 billion in the bank. Now, I get it. They will always say, well, they inherited it. But there was a time, well, that's true. If you looked at the wealthiest people in this country, many of them inherited their fortunes. About 60, 70 years ago, that's true. But if you look at the 1,000 billionaires in this country today, the overwhelming majority of them, 3/4 of them, are self-made because they produced something that society said, hey, I like that. I think I'll buy some of that. And that's what made them their fortunes. It was their idea. It was their risk-taking. It was their blood, sweat, and tears. They just didn't wake up with money in the bank. It's just mind-boggling to me that some people think that. But That's his idea. And when he got questioned about, well, how much is this Medicare for all going to cost? He couldn't answer it. The other thing I think is just a travesty, Will. And by the way, I'm going to direct this to everyone in federal and state government. He asked him, do you know what the Waters did, LSA, do you know what the federal budget is? Couldn't answer it. You're running for United States Senate and you don't know the amount of the federal budget? I believe every single person in the Congress in Washington should have committed to memory not only what the federal budget is, they should know what the spending is and they should know what the revenue is. And if you really want my opinion, I think they ought to have some idea of what the broad categories of that are and how much they consume of each on the spending side and on the revenue side. And the same, Will, in my view, is true for members of our legislature. Every single person in our legislature ought to be able to answer the question, what is the state budget? What is the outlook with respect to deficit or surplus for the 2027 fiscal year? They ought to have that committed to memory. And what are the major categories of spending? And what are the major categories of revenue? I can tell you this, in the private sector, you don't know that. And you're seeking financial support for a project or for a strategy, and you can't stand in front of institutional investors and spout that off the top of your head, they'll kick your butt out onto the street. You might as well dial up your Uber app and get ready to go back to the airport. You ain't getting a dime. Is that unreasonable? So you're running for U.S. Senate and you don't know what the federal budget is? But you can talk about your plans for taxing the wealthy people? You have no idea. You see, math does matter. You don't have to be a math expert. But you ought to know what the budget is when you start talking about Medicare for all, for example, and taxing the billionaires. I mean, this is a good kind of a segue because we got Grover Norquist coming on in the next segment. He's the president of Americans for Tax Reform. We'll get his thoughts on the current state of the economy and also some ideas he might have to improve the efficiency of the United States tax code, and even some things we could do possibly here in Mississippi. Coming right back with Grover Norquist.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. It's our pleasure to welcome now Mr. Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform. Hey, Grover, good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Good to be here, Gerard. Good to be with you.
Yeah, man. So give us your thoughts on the current state of the economy. I know you're watching as we are, the Treasury intervening a bit in the bond markets to try to sort of soothe some of those concerns. But, you know, we've seen this coming, have we not, Grover? With $40 trillion in debt, we crossed that threshold last week. We knew it was going to happen sometime in the month of August 2026. In fact, the prediction markets, you could even go bet on what day that was going to happen. But it just doesn't seem to be any let up here. And, of course, the left says, well, yeah, we just need to go increase taxes. But as you know, that doesn't assure more revenue. In fact, more times than not, you get less revenue.
Well, whenever we've raised taxes, because the Democrats, the left, said that would solve the deficit problem, they actually turn around and increase spending even more. Remember, they cheated Reagan. They said if you raise taxes $1, we'll cut spending $3. The taxes were raised $1. many dollars, but then 3 times as many dollars in spending restraint was supposed to happen. Spending did not go down. It went up, and it didn't go up the way it had been going up. It went up more because when you feed the government, they say, oh, thank you for the dollar, but I bet we can get more from you in the future, so we'll keep spending. And the Democrats have tried in the past to say, we're going to spend more money, and you Republicans, please go steal the money and bring it to us so we can spend it. Always a mistake.
It's just incredible, but that seems to be top of the list of priorities, certainly up there. Medicare for All seems to have evolved as the top priority for Democrats running in this election cycle. And right behind that, of course, is, we're going to pay for that by taxing the wealthy in this country, in particular the billionaires. But that math doesn't come close to working, not to mention that you think you'd get more revenue by doing that. You would have such a harmful effect on the economy, you'd actually see less revenue coming to the Treasury.
And look, our friends, the left-wingers here, they have friends in Europe. They know what happened. In the European countries, 12 of them had wealth taxes, which is a property tax on all property, not just your house, but stocks or bonds or anything like that. Land that you have, a small business that you run. So they had 12 different European countries had wealth taxes. 8 of them have repealed that tax because it did more damage to their economies, Sweden and others. They said, we're losing money. People leave. People decide, somebody who's rich doesn't have to keep investing. They can go buy a boat. They can retire. They can go, I'm not working anymore. It's going to steal it. I'm out of here. So they actually got poorer because they were taxing, quote unquote, the rich who invest in new products and so on. There's still 4, 3 of them pretty much nothing. Spain has something that does bite. But the Europeans looked at it and said, this doesn't work. And even the left-wingers in America, they're talking about having a wealth tax, it's a property tax. Oh, it's only billionaires. Today, the income tax, when it was put in 1913, you had to make $11 million to pay a 7% tax in today's dollars, $11 million.
Yeah.
Today, 7% is half of what the lowest income person who pays income taxes pays. Not the highest, the lowest. So they always say we're going to tax the rich. They forget the rest of the sentence. First, then you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It always starts out with that as an intent to try to get some voter support, but it never ends up that way. So I've been reading about your suggestions with respect to taxation of capital gains. I got to tell you, I have been a proponent. Actually, I think you would agree. I'd like to eliminate tax on capital gains. I think it would be a huge boost to our economy just in doing so. You'd see capital flowing all over the place to create economic output and economic activity and more supply, of course, which tempers inflation. I was hoping we were going to get the Republicans to introduce the Reconciliation 3.0 to index capital gains to inflation, because right now we literally pay taxes on inflation. And you know this, Grover, had the Democrats taken control of the government in Washington, they wanted to tax capital gains as ordinary income.
Yes. A capital gains tax is a second tax on the same dollar. You go to work, you earn $100. You take it home, you invest it in the stock market, so you're preparing for your retirement, put your kids through school. The government comes back and says, oh, well, you're earning some interest on that, or you put it in a stock and that gained value. So we're going to tax the same dollar again. And the Democrats complain, how come we don't tax money that you've earned as much the third time as the first time we tax it, as if those were separate entities? It's the same dollar they're taxing again and again and again. You're right. We should abolish capital gains tax. A lot of economists have said that, and they're right. But we do have something we can do by executive order. The Treasury Department can do it. I've talked to the Treasury Secretary, the President, 3 times. He said he wants to get this done. He's a little bit busy with everything, but I hope he focuses on this before the election and simply says, from now on, we are not taxing the inflation gain in capital gains. So if your house was worth $100,000, you sold it for $200,000, but that $50,000 of that, half of it was inflation because you lived through the Biden inflation, or if you learn through the Clinton inflation, about more than 2/3 of it was inflation. So take the inflation out, only tax the real gain. That would cut most capital gains taxes in half or more and tremendously increase people's life savings and make it easier for people to sell a house and move to where their kids are.
So, Grover, you're saying that could actually be achieved with a simple executive order, would not require Congress to pass a measure?
Yes, absolutely. We've done 3 different studies, legal studies of it. The White House legal beagles have looked at it as well. This can be done. And nobody would have standing to sue, by the way, because nobody gets hurt.
Yeah.
So somebody could say, I don't like that. Okay, but to sue and go to court and say you can't do that, you'd have to have standing. This would allow people to sell their house now and save a lot of money, not be whacked by very high capital gains tax. Same thing with a small business if somebody's ready to retire, for a farmer. All of these things need to happen. But capital gains is not just sometimes a once in your lifetime thing. 30 million Americans pay some capital gains every year. 30 million. And 3/4 of them earn less than $200,000 a year. So you're talking about millions, tens of millions of Americans. More than 60% of Americans own stock. Half of 50+% own a home. Millions own small businesses, farms, land. This affects all Americans, every neighborhood. Very important project to do, and I'm really excited about it. I'm actually going to be talking about it some more October 22nd. I'm coming down to Mississippi for the Mississippi Center for Public Policy. Going to talk at their gala event. Yeah,
I've got that on my calendar, as a matter of fact. Hope to get to meet you then. So,
good. Okay.
Yeah. So, you make the point, though, about small businesses and farms, which are essentially small businesses, mid-sized, but it doesn't matter. What the Democrats wanted to do was eliminate the separate tax structure for capital gains. I talked about this when Kamala Harris was a candidate. Imagine working your whole dang life building a business. You get ready to finally monetize, cash out, that's your retirement nest egg, and the government says, hey, hand me over 37%, then you got the state. Next thing you know, you're paying half of your life's work to the dang government.
Yep. After they already taxed every dollar you invested in your small business, your farm. It is not just a bad tax, it's a second and third tax on the same dollars. And if you're stupid enough to die, they want to take a bunch of it too.
Yeah. So do you feel confident the president may act on this? Are you anticipating an EO between now and the midterms?
I think it's very likely. Ted Cruz has been working with the White House as well as Treasury. Congressional leadership gets it and supports it. And again, I've had one-on-one conversations with the president. He thinks it's a very good idea. I can only imagine there are people putting papers in front of him every day, all the time. Yeah. But this is one that ought to be done soon because the economy would really pick up as everybody reallocated all of their assets and took the cash out that they could have. It would really supercharge the American economy out into the future forever. But as you point out, eventually we should abolish it because you should tax income one time at one rate and go away.
Yeah, totally agree.
You got yours. Go away.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we got about a minute left, but before we go, also would loosen up the inventory in the housing market as well, would it not, Grover?
Oh, it absolutely would. I talked to the head of the people who build houses here in the United States. They said it'd be the biggest thing that could ever happen to new houses, young people being able to buy houses, older people selling houses and gaining real assets. It'd be the biggest thing for the housing industry and for people who own houses that's ever happened.
Let's get this done. Thank you for working on that. Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform, has been our guest. Appreciate you coming on, Grover. Always enjoy it. Thank you, sir.
See you October 22nd.
You bet. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
back in the Element Well studio. Thanks so much for joining us today. Appreciate Grover Norquist for coming on. Man, I didn't know that, Will. I mean, this is something I've advocated for years, and that's the elimination of taxes on capital gains, but certainly at a minimum, indexing capital gains to inflation. That simply means if, let's say, a more common situation, you buy some stock and then you hope it increases in value, you sell it in the future. If you hold it for more than a year, that's considered a long-term capital gain. Thus, the gain on the sale of the stock, let's say you bought it for $50 and you sell it for $100 and you make $50 on the sale, that $50 is subject, if you hold it for a year, to taxation in accordance with long-term capital gains rates. And I think if I'm not mistaken, there are 3 tiers depending on the amount of the gain in a year, total capital gains. I think it's 15% up to 21%, if I'm not mistaken. And so if you bought that stock a long time ago in present-day dollars, and the stock's appreciated, but all it's done is kept up with inflation based on the dollar's value, and you sell it, then you're just paying tax on inflation. You didn't really gain anything if all it did was track inflation. But if it exceeded that, you would hope that it would, the amount by which it increased that is due to inflation. You just take, let's say you bought it 20 years ago, you sell it today, whatever a dollar was worth 20 years ago is then just increased and adjusted for the inflation over that period. So if you bought that stock, like I said earlier, for $50, and in today's terms it's worth $75, then your gain's $25 instead of $50. You get a break. You're not paying on the $25 of inflation that occurred over that period of time. And that's what Grover's talking about with respect to indexing capital gains for inflation. Yes, 0%, 15%, and 20% are the current capital gains rates, and there are some values associated with that in terms of the total gain. Up to $50,000 for a single filer, no capital gains tax. $50,000 to $545,000, 15%. Over $545,000, I said 21. It's 20%. In married filing joint, those figures are roughly doubled, except the 20% over $613,000 in capital gains. That's when you'd pay the 20%. Well, that's a lot less than at the top level of income tax, 37%. So indexing for inflation, however, would mean that the tax bite on the sale of a capital asset, such as stock, such as a business, such as a farm, would be much lower. You wouldn't, essentially, what you're eliminating is payment to the government for inflation that they caused, by the way. You're paying taxes on the inflationary increase in value of that asset. The idea that an executive order could implement this policy is incredible news to me. And I hope it happens, and I hope it happens before the midterms. I do think you would see a lot of people that are sitting on houses, maybe not so much in this part of the country, Will, because current law, as a couple owning a house, the first $500,000 of gain is exempt from capital income tax. Capital gains tax, I should say, not income. Capital gains tax. So your first $500,000 you get without paying any taxes on. But there are parts of the country where housing costs have really exploded, and you got people from my era that bought houses 35, 40 years ago that are sitting on those and won't roll them even though they want to because they don't want to pay the dang taxes. They would have a gain that far exceeds $500,000 in some parts of the country. And so they're squatting on them, and that just props the price of housing up because you're not rotating those. overall in the inventory of houses in the economy. So and you heard what Grover said. What'd he say? He's talked to some folks in the real estate industry, residential real estate industry, said this would be the biggest thing ever as far as moving the industry and getting more houses available on the market, which would have an effect on demand and supply and prices in many areas, just out of reach for many people. So this is good news. I certainly hope the president acts on this. I think it'd be great. And the same thing for you folks. If you've been accumulating money in a standard 401k plan, when you roll money out of those, start taking withdrawals, you pay taxes on those withdrawals. But if you could index the gains in that 401k to inflation, the tax burden and the tax liability would certainly be reduced. And that'd be good news, especially when you need that money when you're retiring. So this is good policy. The Democrats hate this policy. Fox News, SuperTalk News coming up next, an hour of middays, and then Patrick Sullivan with the Mississippi Energy Institute at 12:05. Stay with us. BusinessJournal.com, Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. I've been home.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays live from the Element Wealth Studio. Yesterday, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, man, he had a rather long presentation, Will, I caught. Operation Economic Outcast is what is the label, I should say, to describe the policies that the Trump administration is adopting to force, the goal being to force Iran to capitulate. And, man, it was a series of economic actions intended to design, I should say, really, to pressure Iran to the negotiating table to significantly disrupt their economy, which is already in shambles from the war, from the loss of revenue, from oil moving through the strait. Yeah, that's what Treasury Secretary called it. I'll quote what he said yesterday. Today, at President Trump's direction, the United States Treasury has begun Operation Economic Outcast, an unprecedented campaign against the Islamic Republic of Iran and its enablers. He equated it to D-Day in World War II. He said, as that marked the historic beginning of a campaign with our allies to target and drive the enemy from its positions, today, in that same spirit, we are launching an economic onslaught against Iran's financial connections around the globe. So what they're doing here is putting some various economic provisions in place that would affect Iran's allies and facilitators. That would actually include China, so I'm not sure how they intend to do that. He said that any entity that facilitates money laundering on behalf of Iran, quote, will be removed from the U.S. dollar system. That is a big deal. He said the clock just started ticking and that many of these sanctions won't be immediate. We're giving everybody the opportunity to remedy their bad behavior, said Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Quote, why would I want to blow up the global financial system? So the Secretary, man, delivering some very strong proposals yesterday. He also said to CBS News, we do not have infinite patience here. He said that this economic pressure campaign will not stop until the regime stands alone. And when he was asked, I just mentioned it, about whether Chinese banks that are involved in assisting Iran from a financial perspective, financing their oil imports, would be among those hit with some of these measures, he simply said, quote, "No one is above the reach of U.S. sanctions." So, bottom line is that I think the Trump administration, the president, is frustrated with the lack of progress with this crazy regime, this radical regime, who has no regard for human life, even those of their fellow citizens in their country. And the havoc that is being wreaked on that country from an economic perspective because of this war. And this is an effort to pressure them to concede, come to the negotiating table, and hopefully turn over their nuclear enriched uranium. I just don't know that they will. I'm not confident that this regime is going to respond to this. I applaud the president and the administration for, again, imposing even more harsh economic sanctions, essentially, in an effort to isolate the country. That's what they're basically saying, that outcast is part of the name of the campaign. But I just don't know, man. I think the only way, honestly, to get this done is if there's some sort of surge inside the country. If there's some sort of overthrow attempt by the people who say that's enough, in some way that they organize an overthrow of this regime that's in charge. The problem is they got control of their military. You got to get the military to get on the side of the people. And when they no longer the regime, the people in charge don't have control of the people with the weapons, the guns, the military, the might, that's when I think you can get something done. And I hope that's the case. But that's the latest, essentially. I think the president's frustrated. And this is an idea. I suppose it was presented to him. But, man, yesterday the Treasury Secretary, never seen him quite so stern, so strong in his message, his words, his delivery, as he was on this.
Yeah, and I think the lack of an exit strategy from the get-go on this whole deal.
That's exactly right.
They didn't have one. You know?
So economists, honestly, though, their reaction, they see this, quote, economic D-Day to be less Normandy and more Grenada, is where some of them have explained it.
I mean, you look at the biggest countries they trade with. I was looking on CNBC this morning. China.
Yeah.
UAE.
Yep.
Turkey. Iraq.
Yeah.
I'm going down the list. The European Union. India, Pakistan, Russia. Okay, Russia. Oman. All right, we can deal with that. All right. But what are you going to do about China?
And so we already have a fragile trade relationship, as you know, with China. So, and they are among, as you just pointed out, their critical trading partners. So if they're going to be included somehow in these economic measures, that could endanger our economy, is the concern, and drive prices up even further, which wouldn't be good from a political perspective. So what many economists that I read are saying is that what we need are specific actions against companies or countries that the other countries, more specific, that the statement were just words that won't really have any impact. The Economist, which is a publication that I ingest on a daily basis in my email. They publish the magazine once a month, but you get daily articles in email. And what they reported this morning, now the Economist is moderate, I'd say moderate to slightly left, UK publication. They say Iran will be able to shrug off America's financial threats. Is kind of what their take on the deal is. So we'll see. Like I said, I applaud the president for increasing the pressure on Iran through economic measures. I really hope that in some way we're following the same strategy that was followed to take down the USSR during the Reagan years, which was to get the people behind the idea and get them to rise up and protest and overthrow. Maybe that's the solution. Hopefully that can happen. But right now...
But how long? That took decades.
Yeah, no, you're right. That didn't start and happen in a couple of months.
They started going downhill, and then Reagan comes in and kind of, start spending and
on our military.
Them to spend.
That's exactly right. He outspent them. He sort of broke them, if you will, by just forcing them to spend a tremendous amount of their GDP, their economic output, on the military. We did that here as well, but it was a single-digit percentage of our GDP.
Yeah.
For them, it was high double digits because their GDP wasn't that great because they were – I know the left doesn't want to hear this because they had adopted an economic system of communism. That's why. And people just don't produce as much. Well, they don't get to keep some of the rewards from their production. And the left thinks, oh, you'll just do it out of the goodness of your heart. No. And, they experimented and started giving some of the farmers a little of their own land to develop, to produce, that they could sell and keep the money from, talking about the USSR. And it's amazing how the yields were much greater on those properties and those farms and those parts of their farms than the one the government owned. It's like they don't understand human nature. That fundamentally is why communism, socialism are flawed systems, because I believe they are completely contradictory to human nature. And that's pretty important in creating a quality of life. Coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Need cash for
Dynamite on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. The C Spire text line, 601-879-4395. Just looking at the calendar there, Will, we're going to be on the road a lot in the next couple of months, I should say. We got
very busy, warm autumn.
Yeah, exactly. So looking forward to getting out and about, seeing the great people of Mississippi, taking the show on the road. Don't forget, it's Patrick Sullivan, president of the Mississippi Energy Institute, coming up at 12:05. Also, check out the supertalk.fm website, folks. We need to pass on, Will, that the Second Amendment sales tax holiday is back this weekend. Learn all about that. An article contributed by the SuperTalk News staff, just published yesterday. Mississippi's Second Amendment sales tax holiday is waiting for you this weekend, Friday, August 28th through Sunday, August 30th. Eligible items include some firearms, ammunition, hunting supplies, archery equipment, holsters, hearing protection, whole lot. I'm looking at a fairly long list. I think this is from the Department of Revenue. Yes, it is. That's credited to them in the article. There's items that are eligible, items that are not eligible. Okay, so check out that good piece here by our news team at supertalk.fm. Second Amendment holiday coming up this weekend. The union and John Deere, labor union and John Deere, they're fighting. And, man, they are headed towards what looks like a significant clash. So here's what's happening. It turns out, Will, that John Deere's reporting robust sales, and their outlook's quite positive, and that's boosting their stock. But it's not from what you think. It's not from the more traditional sales to the agricultural industry. It's from all the construction of data centers because of the AI boom. They specifically cite that in their report. So the unions are saying, hey, we want our piece here. You guys are making a bunch of money. Oh, gee. So the members last night rejected a contract from the big implement manufacturer, John Deere. That would have extended their current collective bargaining agreement for 2 years, would have included a 4% annual wage increase, $3,000 bonuses each year, plus no changes to pension and health care. But the union said no go. Their business up 18% to $3.62 billion in the construction segment. Operating profit up 84%. Margins up to 12.1 from 7.7. So, UAW president, this is a guy, Will, you remember, that spoke at the RNC in 2024.
I remember.
And I distinctly remember sitting in the Mississippi. I was blessed, privileged, honored to be a delegate. And sitting in our section there in, where were we? Fiserv Arena, I believe, right? In Milwaukee. And sitting right behind me on that particular day was former Governor Phil Bryant. And he was a little surprised. I just remember looking at him and him looking at me with a kind of a, why is this guy here? Sean Fain.
It was a little, because he didn't, if I remember correctly,
didn't endorse.
He didn't endorse.
No.
But the fact that he was there.
Yeah. It was a little surprising.
Yeah.
And certainly cause for some questions. But he blasted John Deere for laying off workers and signaled that, hey, we want a more lucrative deal because their fortunes have been improved. So that's what's going on with John Deere. And, you know, I don't know what happens if they can't work this out. Does manufacturing stop for a while? Is there a pause, a shutdown of the company while they work through this contract? We certainly shall see. But it's something going on right now. Today, you know, there's an election in South Carolina, a runoff. The sister of the late Senator Lindsey Graham. Still hard to believe that guy's gone, man. He was such a colorful figure in many ways as a U.S. senator, and you know, there's some insiders, Will, that are saying that the president really misses him from a foreign policy advisory role perspective, that he called upon the senator frequently for advice and counsel on foreign policy. But she's up against Ralph Norman, former member of the U.S. House, today. So get this, Will, MAGA Inc., that's the big Trump super PAC, of course, that was quite active during the last three presidential election cycles, 16, 20, 24. Of course, the president winning 16 and 24. They're spending $800,000 today on get out the vote calls and text messages in support of Darlene Graham. So this is the first time this group has spent money, it's being reported, on a race in months. You know how much it has? $400 million in this war chest. Again, does this just not reflect what I've said so many times? There's just too much money in politics. It's mind-boggling when you look at the amount of money being spent on these races. So it's a big runoff election today that is going to determine who will represent the great state, the Palmetto State of South Carolina, in the United States Senate.
Yeah, and the odds makers.
What are they saying?
That's another thing that's great about elections and politics now is you got odds makers. Used to you had to go to the horse track.
Yeah.
To bet. Now you can bet on elections, I guess. They're favoring her, although it's pretty close.
Yeah.
Different ones have different odds, of course, but let's see. Some of them have them neck and neck, but others have Graham favored.
Yeah. Single digits, though, right? I don't think it's beyond that.
You never know.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And we've already learned that some of these polls are clearly flawed.
Florida.
Yeah.
That was
crazy. One. Yeah. Wisconsin governor was another one that was all wrong. And the crazy lady up there, Francesca Hong, ended up losing to a more moderate candidate. I got to circle back to this Abdul El Said interview with Jesse Waters. One of the questions concerned the NFL football. So what Waters had done is went and dug up lots of stuff from El Said that he had said in the past, in social media mainly. And he referred to the NFL as racist. He also said that former San Francisco quarterback Colin Kaepernick, who got lots of attention, obviously, with his various antics, where he refused to stand for the national anthem. You remember that as an example? He referred to him as a good guy back in those days, did El Said. He also said he was a pretty damn good quarterback. No, that's not actually true. He wasn't very good for that level, of course. So when he asked him about that, your statements there, calling the NFL racist, Kaepernick a good guy, you know what he said was, again, diverting the attention away from the question. He said the bigger issue is that we have for football right now is I looked at ticket prices to try and go and see a game with my family. It's astronomical through the roof. So that was his response to those comments about Colin Kaepernick. He never really answered the question, never addressed and responded to the question about why'd you call the NFL racist and Kaepernick a good guy.
But I'm going to tell you, I look at this and you may, you shrug your head and, you go, good grief, what is this guy thinking and all this kind of stuff. But I tell you, there's one good thing about this whole interview is the fact that they're talking to each other.
That's true. You're right about that.
I mean, we have gone for a long time. I mean, here on SuperTalk, we can get Democrats on.
Yep.
But you look at these national network guys. Lars Larson told us the other day, he said, I can't get him to come on my show.
Yeah.
He goes, he says, I'm nice.
Yeah, I agree. No, it's a good point. You're right. They did talk over each other a lot, but it wasn't disrespectful talking to them. They weren't like yelling them down, shouting them down. I think they just had so much to say trying to fit it in. We're coming right back, folks, in the Element Well studio. We got some text to get to.
State.
Oh, life is bigger. It's bigger than you are not me. The links that I will go to, distance in your eyes.
REM, Losing My Religion.
Oh no, I've said too much.
There's a video out there, Will, on YouTube with them performing it live somewhere. It's like a stadium venue. It looks like 5 million people in the audience. That was a big popular hit, wasn't it? And,
they were a big band out of Athens, Georgia. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, they don't seem like you wouldn't place them in Georgia, would you? But I don't recall the venue exactly. They're up on a really high elevated stage because there's a whole bunch of people there out. It just looks like a big open area. Man, they're shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah.
A bunch of them. So appreciate that. Tim from Tupelo says, reverting back to our conversation at the top of the program about this world of college football turned on its head with players playing on the gridiron, representing a college, and then going to the pro ranks and then coming back. And man, that's just crazy. Tim says, crazy these days a player can make more playing football in college than the lowest entry NFL deal. I agree, Tim. That's totally crazy. As a guy who stopped watching college football more than a decade ago, mostly because of players, quote, beating their chest over a simple tackle, yeah, I'm that guy, but this current chaos is amusing me. I hear you, but that's not consistent with the rest of the country, as you pointed out, who's obsessed with it and spends a bunch of money on it. Not only on attending games, but, of course, they tune in. They buy the stuff that's advertised. If they didn't, the advertisers wouldn't advertise, as you well know. Well, that's the way that game works. And they buy the merch and everything else. Look, how many people have bought, like, second houses in the college town that is their favorite just so they can have a place to stay? It's made the price of housing
for the 6 games, the 6 home games.
It's crazy, the price of housing, as a result of the increased demand from those who want to be close to where they play and sort of make a weekend out of it. So it's had a big effect. Man, look at Tuscaloosa, Alabama, as an example. When Nick Saban came to Tuscaloosa, it dramatically improved the economy in Tuscaloosa, and it had a positive economic impact throughout Alabama and the university.
Oh, yeah.
I got to tell you, I was up at Oxford this past Saturday and helping out with Fraternity Rush. 1,500 men, young men, going through Rush. Like 2,500 through Sorority Rush. Over half from out of state. And when I just casually ask them, you'd be surprised the number of people say, I came here for the football, for the sports.
It's, what do they call it? Front porch, front patio. It attracts
I know what you're talking about, yeah. It's amazing.
It really is.
I talked to some kids from Colorado. They said, I came
Colorado.
here. Yeah, I'm here for SEC football. And the guys at the fraternity told me, I think 38 states are represented in the current, out of 300 members. 38 states. Yeah. That's just mind-boggling to me. But this is happening. A lot of it is folks from other parts of the country that don't have great athletics at the college level, and they know the SEC is the best.
It's fun.
Yeah, and they come down for that. And you have to admit, it's a big part of the college experience. You can't deny that. But Nick Saban, man, he had a lot to do with boosting the economy in the state of Alabama and increasing enrollment. If you look at the numbers before and after Saban at University of Alabama, I'm just using him because he had unbelievable success, right? Winning national championships. It's crazy, but it's what's going on, and I think it's here with us for a while. I really do. John in Pontotoc said Jesse never asked about Social Security going broke. We were discussing earlier the rather interesting, fascinating, entertaining, honestly, interview. Will played a clip for us earlier. This was Jesse Waters on his hour-long program on Fox with Abdul El Said. He is the Democrat nominee for U.S. Senate in the state of Michigan, a self-avowed socialist that wants to all the things a socialist wants. Top of the list, Medicare for all, and of course free child care and free college tuition and family leave. Just go down the list. And
reparations.
Reparations, government-funded gender-affirming care, which is genital mutilation of children, just the whole list. And by the way, significantly higher taxes on the more affluent population in the country. You're right, though, John. He did not ask him about that. And, Will, as you know, nobody in the Congress wants to talk about this. It's kind of like talking to members of the Mississippi legislature and statewide leaders about PERS. They don't want to talk about it. It's not that they completely reject it or shun it or dismiss it. They're just not going to lead with that. They're not going to just make a big deal out of that because, A, it's not popular, and anything they say, the other side will say, they want to take away your benefits. It doesn't matter what you say, just mentioning the words Social Security draws the criticism from your political opposition. They want to take it away from you. No, they want to fix it. And to some extent, in the PERS program, it's kind of the members of PERS versus the taxpayers to some extent. Because all the changes, all the fixes, they impose pain on somebody. It doesn't matter. If you think about, okay, we're going to reduce benefits, which I think would be a mistake, and I'm not even sure it would stand a legal test, that's pain. If you talk about, well, we're going to increase the employer contribution rates, that's pain. That, by the way, you know who gets affected the most by that? The local governments. It's the counties. It's the cities. It's the school districts when you think about the large number of teachers we have. As an occupation, we have more in that occupation in government than any other. And you're talking about increasing the employer, the school district's contribution on that. And then, of course, in the state agencies as well. So that becomes a cost, a burden to taxpayers. So I know I've seen, for example, Commissioner Andy Gibson, who's running for governor, he said, I'm going to fix it day one. And the PERS people say, okay, yeah, this is who we got to support because he cares about our system. He's going to fix it day one. But I haven't seen him say anything specific on what he wants to do there. He just says we're going to fully fund it. Well, that means you've got some money sitting somewhere that's going to address the $26 billion unfunded liability. The actuaries say you need $150, $200 million a year for many years to shore it up, or you need to increase the contribution rate from where it's headed to which is 19.9 to about 26, 27%. Well, that's an additional expense on top of payroll in every public sector entity in the state where the employees of that entity are also members of the Public Employees Retirement System. So that's more of a burden on taxpayers. We just need to be honest about that. That money's got to come from somewhere. Where it's going to come from, if it's going to come from the state to cover that additional expense, that's general funds. We pay income taxes and sales taxes on that. So I'm not sure how we're going to do that and cut car tax and eliminate the income tax. Sounds to me like we'd be about $1 billion in the hole if we implemented all that. Yeah. That's the way the math kind of shakes out. And the same things with Social Security. We all know we're a short 4 or 5 years away, maybe 6, depending on whose actuarial estimates you look at, with Social Security not being able to fully pay benefits. I don't think the Congress is going to let that happen. That's political suicide, of course. If all of a sudden your check in one given month is less than the one before, all the people out there relying on that as there's almost, for many I should say, their sole source of income when they get to that level. That's how they live, Social Security. You're going to cut that benefit while you got inflation going in the other direction? Man, that's a bad move politically. So what are they going to do? I don't know. Well, I know what the left wants to do. We've probably proposed more plans than any. You know why? Because it's easy to just say raise taxes on the rich people. That's an easy one. They're all ready for that. We're going to fix Social Security by raising taxes on rich people. Except that math doesn't work either, and they won't explain that. And that would also have a deleterious impact on our economy that they just don't get. Something else Saeed said last night, I'll get it on the other side of the break. It concerns billionaires, right? Which, I guess I already covered this, where he said, they just make all their money from their income without recognizing that, no, they produce something somewhere along the line to get to that level of income. It's a lack of understanding of basic economics, basic human nature. Good point, though, John and Pontotoc, about them not talking about that. Coming right back.
Just a dream, just a dream.
Up of Mississippi.
We'll do it live
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
There's an Elvis movie on the marquee sign. We've all seen at least 3 times. Everybody's broke.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio. We were just talking about this situation with the NIL luring NFL players back to school. So, Will, while we were on the break on the studio television, they were displaying statements from coaches in the NFL and some coaches in the college ranks as well. Obviously not crazy about this and just, I think, a little bit in shock. I didn't catch it. It went by in a hurry and I wasn't looking at it. But the Oregon coach had something to say. Might have to look that up.
Yeah, Dan Lanning, he said they just don't belong.
Yeah.
And so now, as I alluded to earlier, the Big Ten came out with not only a strong statement, they also said it ain't happening here. They're going to pass a rule today, in fact.
Okay. The conferences.
Is what Pete Thamel is reporting.
Okay.
That doesn't allow players to return from the NFL and play for a Big Ten school. Anyone who is declared for the NFL draft and did not withdraw, appeared on an NFL roster, or signed a contract with a pro league cannot be on a Big Ten roster.
Yeah.
The Big 12 is doing the same thing. They are considering a league-wide policy banning pro players returning to the conference, meaning that all 4 power leagues are set to consider such a rule. So last night, the SEC put out a statement, but they didn't put out any action that they were going to take, unlike the Big 12 and the Big 10. At the exact same moment that the SEC put out that statement, LSU's basketball team signed a former pro.
Oh my gosh! Oh geez!
I mean, it was like simultaneous.
Oh man!
So
this is nuts.
Yeah, and again, it's not like, now they could certainly expand it, but this is a certain group of players.
Yeah.
Okay, who are kind of in limbo in some ways. They didn't get the COVID year. They were a little bit too young for that, and they didn't fall under this new 5 years to play 5 or whatever the new deal is. So they're kind of like in-betweeners. And so and it's about, I think there's a certain group of them. It just so happens that several of them had played at Ole Miss, and Lane Kiffin's trying to get them to go to LSU. I mean, it's just kind of like, a perfect storm almost.
Unbelievable.
But, yeah, so fun times.
We're just getting started on this, too. That's what's
and the
crazy.
Season's, 11 days away, something like that?
It's insane. It does make sort of call into question, does it not, Will, the loyalty situation there? Because,
there ain't no loyalty.
I know, and I agree with it, nor is there. I've said this about coaches. You get these coaches, and, they're all in. And look, it's what they get paid to do, right? It's to promote.
Somebody commented, and I thought that was a very interesting comment on one of these social media posts from the SEC, said, how many coaches have gone to the pros and then come back and coached in college?
That's true.
Why can they do it? Why can't these guys do it? And look, if you're a capitalist, which I know you and I are, you look at this and you go, well, when I was in school, they never prohibited me from going out and getting another job.
True.
But for years they did that with college athletes, essentially.
Well, but there's always been a pretty strong firewall between amateur and professional. That's what's happened.
Yeah.
That's been dissolved.
It's been completely dissolved.
Completely. Those lines are blurred. And it's a Wild West free-for-all. There ain't no doubt about it. But the coaches, I was going to say, we fans like to think, oh, they love it here and they're all about it, and they're, because they're wearing all the clothes, and everything they say and do is all about their team and their players and their university. That's what they get paid to do. I'm fine with that. But you know as well as I do, their loyalty is about
Yeah.
Like, oh, I got a better deal over there? Yeah. Oh, I can say the same thing about them.
They're paying
right?
me $8 more. I'm going over here.
Who can forget the famous, I remember Tommy Tuberville, they're going to carry me out of here to Pine Box. And he said that everywhere he went. Oh, my gosh. Gary from Tishomingo says, I agree with you, Gerard. Besides their qualifications for someone to run for Congress, they should also have to complete a standard form application that answers the basic questions about our government. That was just a comment I made that Saeed didn't know what the federal budget was. I just don't see it. You know why it's even, to me, a bigger requirement, Will? Because we have $40 trillion of debt and a $2 trillion annual deficit. It's pretty important. I get it if things are just running so hunky-dory smooth, we don't have any debt, we balance the budget. But the fact that we don't do either, I think, increases the need for you as a member of the United States House or Senate to understand just the basic financial aspects of government. Gary, I also think that should apply to state lawmakers and legislators as well. We're coming right back after Fox News and SuperTalk News. We've got Patrick Sullivan from the Mississippi Energy Institute.
Small town Saturday night. It's a small town Saturday night. It's a small town Saturday night.
You're beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We're pleased to welcome now Patrick Sullivan. He's the president of the Mississippi Energy Institute. Hey, Patrick, thanks for coming on.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
So tell the folks, what exactly does the Mississippi Energy Institute do? What's your mission?
So we were created to guide public policy as it relates to energy-based development in Mississippi. We're all private, but we work very closely with the legislature and our elected leaders, and our job at the end of the day is help advise them to keep our state on track and how we think about energy and how we can leverage it to attract development.
And I assume that covers all forms and sources of energy. Is that right?
The full spectrum.
Okay.
I think of it in terms of the way we consume it. We consume electricity, we consume transportation fuels like gasoline and diesel, and then we consume heating fuels like natural gas for our homes.
Yeah. Well, Mississippi is a pretty significant producer of energy. We have lots of oil and gas deposits in particular that gas a lot, right, that we produce here in the state. And it's a pretty significant industry as well.
It is. It's important. A lot of it happens in rural Mississippi. We consume more oil and natural gas than we produce in our state, but we produce more in the consumable. We produce more electricity in our state than we consume, and then you especially when you throw in Chevron's Pascagoula refinery, we produce more gasoline in Mississippi than we consume.
Interesting.
But in terms of the raw products like crude oil and natural gas, it are very important industries to our state, but we consume more than we produce.
So how does this situation in the Middle East with their reduction of the flow of oil, certainly before Iran was attacked by this country, how does that affect the industry in Mississippi in any way?
Well, So the companies that produce energy in Mississippi, some of them are based here, some are based in Texas or some other place. The market is affected, obviously, and we all see it at the gas pump.
Yeah.
The market is affected by bottlenecks in the global supply chain, and so those are changing the level of profitability. I think it is somewhat of a relief. Consumers don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear it. We want gas to be as cheap as it possibly can. But the reality of the industry is we want a healthy balance of production and consumption, and to have a healthy balance on the production side, there needs to be profitability in the industry. So if oil's $50 a barrel, it's hard for a lot of companies in the industry to make money.
Pretty much they say that.
They're losing money. And so if it's $110 a barrel, it's really hurting consumers. And so somewhere in between there is a healthy balance.
And last I checked this morning, we're $82, $83. I think it's still in that 80s range, which is going to keep the price of the pump elevated.
Right. And so, I think we're kind of getting into that balance. You think about what inflation did to increase cost of everything here over the last 5 or 6 years. It's the same in the oil and gas business. The cost of operating and running a business, even on the labor side, is much more than it was just 5 years ago.
Well, we had Mike McCormick on. He's president of Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation yesterday, and of course they service farmers with various insurance products and other services, and was talking about how the cost of inputs, in particular the cost of diesel, is having a big negative impact on their industry. Yeah, farmers are I don't represent, but I think a lot of them will tell you it's the only industry where the goal is to break even. Yeah, exactly. And they don't control the price of what they sell. It's purely at the whim of the market on the various commodities markets, and oil works that way as well, right? So a lot of folks think, well, why do the big oil companies, they are making record profits right now because the price is elevated, but there was several years they didn't do so well. In fact, a couple of the COVID years lost big money.
Right. It all balances out.
Yeah.
And so, at the end of the day, what we all want is we all want cheap forms of energy.
Sure.
And we all want costs to be under control. And so just going back to the ways that we consume it, electricity, gasoline at the gas pump, diesel on the farm, heating fuel, we all want those to be in balance. And so it very much gets down to what is our public policy, and what was our public policy 20 years ago and 10 years ago, and what are things that happened, especially on the federal level, that impacted where we are today. And so, like, for example, we're seeing electricity demand skyrocket from all the growth in the technology industry, which is being caused by consumption, by consumers like us. And everybody, if you think about every aspect of our life and the role of data in that, and so we can look back to what's happening in natural gas-based electricity expansion today and think about, well, what are things that happened 10 or 15 years ago that have resulted in us only building out new natural gas generators as the way to expand electricity. You think about, we left a generation off of doing nuclear development.
Yeah.
And as a matter of
trying
policy,
to catch up now.
Yeah, now as a matter of policy, we're not building coal-powered facilities in the U.S., even though China's building them by the hundreds. We're not. And so natural gas is a great fuel and very efficient and very cheap at the moment. Well, the question is, will it always be that way? Because we're greatly dependent on it in our economy, and becoming more so.
But most of the electricity generating plants that are being constructed, they are expected to use natural gas as a fuel, right? I mean, that's the primary source of fuel to produce their power. It's not coal. Are there any other options for that an electric generating plant can use?
No. I mean, the new technology business, like data centers, and most industry needs steady loads of energy. And there's three ways that we get that. It's natural gas, it's coal, or nuclear. Nuclear takes so long and is so expensive to develop. Once you get it built and it's operating, it is a great, great deal. But it takes time to do that. Grand Gulf is the cheapest source of power in Mississippi today, but it was built in 1984. If we were going to build another Grand Gulf and started today, it probably wouldn't be operating until the early 2040s. And so that just leaves natural gas as the only option, because the federal government, in their wisdom, just decided that in the Obama administration that as a matter of policy, we were going to make it as hard as we possibly could for utility companies to build coal plants.
Yeah. Kind of got its start during the Carter administration. We had the meltdown at 3 Mile Island. That really spooked everybody and became a significant deterrent to further development of nuclear power. But now you've seen the plans for lots of nuclear projects. Can't remember the name of the organization. It's kind of the Association of Nuclear Power. But was reading up on some of that last week. In particular in Texas, there's some big plans for lots of nuclear plants. And they're saying, like you said, 10, 12 years for construction. But like thousands of construction workers involved in those projects for a decade.
Right. And we're seeing a lot of talk about that, but we're not seeing real activity and actual construction. Of course, there's a lot of conversation about new technologies like small modular reactors.
SMRs.
You've got some 100 companies out there trying to develop a prototype for that, but none of those are really commercially available and commercial options today. And so those, however that develops, nobody knows, but those are still years on it. I think it would take a very aggressive, we may see it out of this administration, a very aggressive move in the federal policy level to really encourage actual build-out of new nuclear.
I thought the president issued an EO to that effect, an executive order not too long ago, with sort of promoting nuclear energy.
They've certainly been more active than any recent administration. Chris Wright, the Secretary of Energy, he is a serious human. He knows what he's doing. And so, if the needle moves, I think this is the administration to do it. And maybe you would see some encouragement or participation from the private sector, like from the technology industry.
Yeah,
to help finance those deals.
So, it was actually a year ago where he issued 4 executive orders that were designed to kind of pump up the nuclear energy markets and the delivery of nuclear energy as electricity. So here at home, we've got 7 different data center sites that are under construction right now. AWS in Madison, 2 campuses. 5 of those buildings went online at the end of 25, and they're close to more. We got a break right now. We can continue the conversation. You can stay with us, huh? Yeah. So, but we got 3 major electricity providers in the state, and then we've got a number of electric co-ops as well. But they seem to be responding to the need for this additional energy in a way that won't affect the non-data center ratepayers. We can discuss that?
That's exactly what we needed, yeah.
Okay. On the other side of the break, Patrick Sullivan, president of the Mississippi Energy Institute, in the Element Well studio, coming right back.
Yeah, I feel all right tonight. Yeah, I feel all right. Now I feel all right tonight.
Nowadays, Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
That's the old Marshall Tucker band there. That was real popular when I was in high school, by the way.
That's good.
Heard It in a Love Song was a big hit.
That was one of my favorites.
Yeah, that was a big one. We're back with you in the Element Well studio. We're talking to Patrick Sullivan, president of the Mississippi Energy Institute. So, Mississippi has landed a number of big-time data center hyperscaler projects. Tens of billions of dollars that are going to be infused into our state in that construction. in development. Our Governor, Tate Reeves, involved in that quite a bit, promotes that as something really good for the state, and likes to boast about that, and I don't blame him. It's a big deal. It's a massive amount of investment. Lots of concerns about how that might affect the electricity rates for the ratepayers, as these hyperscalers require lots more power. And the concern, as you know, Patrick, is, well, they're not going to totally cover the cost of this new generation capacity and transmission capacity. Thus, the ratepayers are going to have to help pick some of that up. And one of the major concerns, of course, is that those contracts are done independent of the Public Service Commission between the data center operators and the power companies. Energy, I guess, the big one in play here. Certainly, I would say they cover the western part of the state. It just seems to me like, though, well, this is a problem if they've negotiated a rate that does not produce the revenue necessary to cover the cost, the incremental cost of delivering more electricity. Haley Pisackerly at Energy says, no, that's not the case, that this is actually going to help us keep rates lower in the future than they would have been without these investments.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just don't know a whole lot about data centers. And so they hear, as you said, they hear the governor talk about the level of investment. And the obvious question is, okay, well, that's great. It sounds good, but why is that good for me?
Yeah.
Or is it good for me? And, I like to tell people that it's important to understand the path that we were on before all of this local development. Our electric systems needed scale because our population hadn't changed a whole lot. Our industrial base had not changed a whole lot. And so you think about it, at your house, if our income level is the same as it was 20 years ago, we're going to be in a crunch. Because the cost of everything has gone up. It was the same on our electric system. We needed new customers on our electric system, and boy, we got one when we got Amazon and these data centers. And so the policies in Mississippi are when a new industry or a new business or even a new household comes on, we pay the cost of connectivity to our home. So on a massive scale, Amazon Web Services is paying the cost for everything that they need to supply electricity to their operation. The benefit that we get from that is now we get this giant new customer that's helping us pay a share of all of the other costs that we all chip in and pay for together. And so what this does in time is it takes pressure off of all the rest of us to pay the bills when Entergy has to replace an old power plant like they're doing in Greenville and Vicksburg over on the river, when they have to replace old transformers or old poles or old wires with new equipment. And every time that we do that, or every time they do that, the system becomes more efficient because the wire technology, the transformer technology is better than the 1980 model that they were replacing.
Yeah. And so, as you know, just explain to our audience, the electric utility business features their economic model is exceedingly high fixed costs. It's mostly fixed costs associated with the generation and transmission facilities and infrastructure. It's not the variable cost associated with the fuel. I mean, that's a component, but the fixed costs far outweigh that. So when they go out and have to make all these investments, they got to recover that in the rates they charge to those consuming electricity. Well, so you got a certain fixed cost, whether you got 100 customers or 1,000. That's the point. When you got 1,000, those costs are distributed at a lower rate across 1,000, obviously, from the math than 100. That's kind of what this is. Yeah, it's economies of scale.
It's true. The fixed costs are spread over however many kilowatt hours are sold through the system. And so when more kilowatt hours are sold in the system, the fixed costs are spread at a lower rate to all of us.
So that's why you want big customers to come in and cover a big chunk of those fixed costs. And I know Haley Pisackerly has explained to us, and it's not just him; it's all these energy companies that the cost of transformers is like doubled since COVID, that the supply chain got disrupted, never really recovered and resumed to its state before then. And that's a big cost associated with modernizing grids. They do wear out. You got to replace them, and ratepayers have to pay for them. That's the way it works.
Yeah, well, you got to have growth to keep system costs down. And it's the same whether you're talking about electric systems or road systems, water and sewer systems. And that's what we're getting. We lacked the growth before this recent development. Now that we have the growth, not only are we seeing pressure come off of electric rates going forward, but also we're seeing enormous new tax revenues coming to our system. And you can see it in Madison County with the volume of road work. And so just we want to live in nice places, but we want our taxes to never go up. And so we've got to have growth to get both systems that are nice and in operation and work and keep our taxes low.
Well, it's a good point. Loudoun County, Virginia, as you know, is kind of considered data center alley in this country, and they have been steadily reducing their millage on their property taxes. It's like half of what it was before all the data centers started building up there. And I'd like to see the same thing happen here in the state of Mississippi, where our supervisors would, rather than spending that additional revenue, and some of it, put it to good use to benefit the residents of the county. It certainly makes sense, the school districts, the cities, but I'd like to see some of that be returned to us in the form of lower property taxes.
Well, that will only be an option in the places that is seeing that development, and growth must come from somewhere. And so it's not just data centers. I mean, the technology sector is something that is driving growth globally. And so you look at some of the manufacturing and ancillary, but like Siemens making huge investments in production facilities here for things like transformers and grid components. You've got the big Indian company, Jabil, that's made a giant investment up in Marshall County, again, to supply data centers. Howard Industries, a family-owned business here that's grown and created here in Mississippi, making transformers. All of these things, this is what growth looks like today. So that, for states and localities, the question is, are you going to participate and benefit from that in terms of stable electricity rates, new tax bases, or are you going to deal with the other challenges, which are worse, of no growth?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. So, but the key is, I think we have good electricity provider operators in our state. The three big ones, and then the electric co-ops as well. And I have confidence that they're negotiating these contracts in good faith, that these are going to be a good deal, that will keep this burden of additional capacity and transmission off the non-data center ratepayers. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. They pay their way.
Well, you mentioned the regulators earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another important point. Just to have the ability to move with the speed needed to accommodate development. They made special provisions for this project, but it's not outside of regulation.
Yeah.
The regulators, which are elected in 3 areas of the state, they're seeing everything that's going on, and ultimately they're the ones that approve whether costs go into the rate base or not.
Yeah. So you still have that guardrail, that firewall there, if you will, that if these guys show up and say, I'm sorry, we blew it, we got to raise rates to cover some of the investments we made to accommodate these new big users of electricity. I don't think the PSC is going to be friendly to them.
That's just not the policy in Mississippi for the utilities or for the state.
Yeah,
as customers pay their own way, and then they become components of the system where we all share in cost.
And you're watching this with Governor Greg Abbott in Texas. He's requesting an audit of all the data centers to provide some information. And hasn't issued a strict moratorium, but basically says you're going to have to do this, for us to get the information to keep on going.
Yeah, well, and so for those who want to keep costs low, there actually has to be real solutions that come with that, and that's what I would say. These days, there's nothing better locally than data center development.
Than having a big user, users.
Right.
So that's going on, and I also noticed that the two states that have the most data centers, that's Texas and Virginia, both of them have rates that are below the national average.
Well, it's funny how that works.
All right. We appreciate it, Patrick. Thanks for coming in, man. Patrick Sullivan, president of the Mississippi Energy Institute, has been our guest. Half an hour of Middays remains. Stay with us.
Rolling them hills and it's waiting for me there. Wait for me there.
Okay, now you have a good one.
Well, there you go with the Marshall Tucker Band. Heard it in a love song.
I ain't never been with a woman long enough for my boots to get old.
All right. We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio.
You know, there was nobody named Marshall Tucker in the Marshall Tucker Band. It's true.
That's pretty cool.
They all went to Vietnam together.
I didn't know that.
They were all in the Marine Corps. They all went to Vietnam together. And when they got back, they decided to form a band. Toy Caldwell was the guitarist. He sang on a couple of the songs, but he was mainly the guitarist. I think he wrote a lot of their songs. Anyway, they had this place where they would practice, like the storage building or something. And they noticed that this guy named Marshall Tucker had his name on everything. So they'd practice, you're sitting there, you've done that, you play in a band, you sit there and you practice and you look around, you see Marshall Tucker here on, this box over there, and you see Marshall Tucker on the wall, and they finally decided, we're going to call ourselves the Marshall Tucker Band.
I didn't know that.
And turns out Marshall Tucker was an old blues guy who had, I think, had practiced in that same storage unit. I think that's what it was.
Okay.
And so, that's where they got their name. But,
well, I guess, are they talking about the Marshall brand of amplifiers?
No, it was a bluesman named Marshall Tucker.
Oh, okay. I got you. That is interesting. I didn't know that.
And they lived a hard life.
Yeah.
Toy Caldwell died in the early 90s. I think he died of a drug overdose. And I think the guy who plays the flute might be the only one left, really, if I'm not mistaken.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of them, they lived it was a very, very tough existence for the Marshall Tucker Band. And they put out a lot of albums, but man, that song is one of my favorites. Fire on the Mountain, Heard It Love Song, Take the Highway's another one. Just a great, great band with a flute. I mean, who uses a flute?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, those were kind of popular in rock songs in the 60s, but in their time period, that was early 70s, I think?
Was early to to late 70s, and they were kind of that band, kind of like Lynyrd Skynyrd, Allman Brothers to some degree. It was Southern rock. But really, I mean, you think about it, a lot of it was just country. What we would call country rock, basically.
I think so. Today, I would agree with that. I didn't know that. Didn't know there wasn't a Marshall Tucker.
There was no Marshall Tucker in the Marshall Tucker Band.
And certainly didn't know they all served in the Marines in the Vietnam era.
They were, I think, the core group were in the Marine Corps. I think Toy Caldwell did multiple tours.
I'll be darned.
In the Marine in Vietnam in the Marine Corps. So
we were talking about the NFL and talking about this interview, I should say more specifically, with Abdul El Said. He is the Democratic nominee for United States Senate, won the primary on the Democrat side. He will be, of course, vying for the seat of United States Senate in the upcoming general election. But fascinating interview he had, entertaining interview last night with Jesse Waters on Fox, and he was asked about past comments, calling Kaepernick a good guy and denouncing the NFL as racist on the C Spire text line. I'm a huge Cap hater, but he did play in a Super Bowl and had a cannon of an arm. He wasn't that bad. When he started doing that woke crap, he started sucking. Well, I agree. I mean, if you've made it to that level, obviously you are an extraordinary athlete, and you've got incredible talent, athletic talent, and skills. I'm just saying that at that level, he kind of fell off. He got, I agree, when he started getting into all the woke stuff and he decided he was going to be more of a social justice warrior than a football player, seems to me like is when his performance, his athletic performance, started to wane. So I would agree with that. Please stop calling this guy a doctor. He is not. He never passed his board exams and did not do any residence, says Mark from Gulfport. I'm aware of that, Mark. I'm actually repeating how he was being referred by Jesse Waters a couple of times last night. So I understand he did do something that a lot of folks have not done and certainly are required to do, to become a doctor, and that's graduate from medical school. So I don't disagree that it's the same thing, by the way, Will. You know, when you I believe this is still the case, when you pass the CPA exam, something I know a little bit about, you're not a CPA. You've got to have a certain amount of practical experience, you know, before you're considered. It's the same sort of deal. You still got to, even though you graduate, you got to complete some time practicing and operating in that respect. Let's see. Mo says, I don't care that much about the NFL because they are at work. Last year I only watched 1 or 2 NCAA games a week. This year I don't even have a streaming service that has sports. With all these changes, I don't care about college sports anymore. Except you're not aligned with a lot of people in the country, Mose. I get it. You certainly have the right to do that. But you can't deny it's extremely popular, Will. It just is. Every dang game is sold out. And the TV audiences are huge, and the contracts keep getting bigger, and the money is pouring in, and the NILs are all loaded with cash. Many of them are, the ones that have an affluent alumni base. They're falling all over themselves to give money. Heck, where did Indiana come from to win the national championship? Texas Tech. My son went to Texas Tech. So they got a bunch of wealthy alumni. I think they have 1 or 2 that bankrolled their whole collective.
In Texas Tech's case, yes. For Indiana, it's Mark Cuban was one of them. But also, too, they have, I think, the largest alumni base in the country. And when you get a large percentage of those to start giving monthly donations, all of a sudden you can afford some players that you couldn't afford before.
Oh, that's exactly right. So, look, these guys, they get a charge out of, it's my money that put the national championship team on the field. So on the C Spire text line, Mo said it was Slane Castle in Ireland, 80,000 in attendance. That was the REM concert that I couldn't remember. I've just seen the video of it. 80,000's a bunch to watch a rock band. Let's see. On the C Spire text line, how much will the average teacher make at retirement, and how much will their 13th check be? Well, I haven't done that math. When I wrote an article, as Will knows, a couple of years ago, outlining the situation with the public employees retirement system, you can find it at SuperTalk FM if you're interested. Now, I'll admit, it gets kind of wonky and into the weeds a little bit, the technical aspects of all that. But in general, when you look at the way the 13 check works, you really can't calculate that because the 13 check, it's actually the cost of living adjustment. It is automatic. And let's see, I'm trying to remember the provisions, Will. I had all that memorized at one point. But if you retire, I believe, before you're 65 because you have the requisite 30 years under your belt of service, between that age and 65, you get a 3% raise. I believe I'm recalling this correctly, per year. That is just 3% of whatever that year's total retirement benefit is. Once you cross over the 65-year-old mark, then it's compounded. So it's I believe 3% for the years between your start of retirement to 65. After that, it's compounded. So it's the compounding that really drives up that so-called 13th check, the cost of living adjustment, which, by the way, is not tied to the cost of living. That's where the problem is. It's called a cost of living adjustment. It's really just, here's some more pay in accordance with this computation. Social Security, on the other hand, there are cost of living adjustments that Social Security provides. Those are tied to the cost of living, to the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. So it really doesn't matter, though, to the person that asked this question from the perspective of this is what is in Mississippi State statute. This is the expectation and the policies under which, from a retirement perspective, every single one of these people who work for the state government expect in the public sector. And I believe that the government is obligated to pay them in accordance with what was committed in their contract as an employee of the public sector in the state of Mississippi. Question is, now that we know we got a funding problem, how do we fix that? Coming right back with the final segment of Middays. Stay with us.
This is talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We are back with you in the Element Wealth studio, final segment today. So I did a little digging into some PERS documents on the break there. There was a question about I think it was average teacher, wasn't it, Will? Yeah, how much will the average teacher make at retirement and how much will their 13th check be? So in retirement parlance, pension, that's referred to, by the way, as the replacement rate. That's what they call it. And even going back to 1935 and Social Security, when Social Security was created, many don't realize the purpose of Social Security was to secure your life from a financial perspective should you happen to make it to age 65. Because the life expectancy when the program was created was 59 for a male and 61 for a female. It was rare for someone to make it to 65. Fast forward, we're still trying to operate the program on that same model, that same premise. And that's why it doesn't work, because it relies on people. I shouldn't say doesn't work. That's why it's going broke. It relies on people working to pay for the people retiring. And if there ain't enough people working to cover that, and the PERS program, same way. We keep seeing more people retiring, fewer people working, and the numbers don't work. But I did look it up. For those with 25 years of service, that means that once you hit 65, you can retire, full retirement benefits with 25 years of service in our PERS program. 50% of average final compensation. That's generally speaking what you get. So if, for argument's sake, if you retire and you're making $100,000 on average for your final 4 years, you're going to make $50,000 as a retiree. Now that keeps escalating because of the compounding of the cost of living adjustment. But on average, that's what the retirees are making. For those with 30 years of service, it's 62.5%. 62.5%. Jason in Tupelo says, I'm pretty sure we won't be getting a data center in the Holly Springs area. Laugh out loud. That's probably a good bet there. D. Jones, no mention of pollution issues associated with data centers, not to mention privacy and the federal government granting them military installation status. Not really sure what you're talking about there, other than the Trump administration has indicated that some land owned by the federal government will be made available for development of data centers and even nuclear power plants. This is an excellent idea, a really good thing. With respect to pollution, the only pollution generated by a data center, there are no smokestacks coming out of the data center buildings. Computers don't emit any sort of exhaust into the atmosphere. It would be from the gas generators that are used in the event power is lost. Those get tested once a month, 30 minutes. Those are diesel generators. And the emissions from those in the modern facilities, certainly here in Mississippi, I can speak specifically about those that are installed at the Amazon campuses. They emit about a quarter as much into the atmosphere as a standard 18-wheeler diesel tractor. In fact, they are rated as Tier 4 by the EPA, and the standard truck diesel engine is a Tier 1. And that has to do with what's being emitted into the atmosphere. These are EPA grades and standards, by the way. So the other thing would be the emissions of into the atmosphere from the actual power, the electricity generating plants. That's all done in accordance with EPA standards. This is more like what Democrats want. They don't want to use fossil fuels. They want to use all solar and wind. So if you oppose that, then that means you want to use solar and wind, then you're more aligned with the Democrats in that respect. Joey the trucker said, it's a good song, your truck on down the road or up the road. I agree. Let's see what else we got. The lead singer, drummer, and flute player are still alive. Really? I didn't know that. That's Ike in Saltillo talking about the Marshall Tucker Band, which Will's been playing for us today. The guy's a good debater. He gave Jesse all he wanted, said Bub in Starkville. I agree, and I will give him this. He did say over and over, talking about Abdul El Said, the nutcase Democrat socialist that won the primary for on the Democrat side for Senate in Michigan. He did say over and over again something that I do think is true, that people care about the cost of food and the cost of gas. He said that. He just didn't give any ideas on how to address it, and how to solve that problem. He dwelled on that and danced around all the questions about past comments and statements he had made. Smart politically, not sure it flies in the general election. Out of here today, back with you again tomorrow. Until then, stay safe and God bless everyone.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.